G'day mate, 40 here. Let's talk about the difference between intimacy and intensity. In most of my relationships, I was chasing intensity. We'd play all sorts of games. Okay, let's pretend that I am your professor. Let's pretend I am your boss. Let's pretend that you are my therapist. Let's pretend. Let's amp up the intensity, but didn't really lead to sustainable intimacy. I was chasing highs, but there'd be the high and then there'd be the crash. So what's the difference between intimacy and intensity? I want to explore that a little bit because most of my relationships didn't work out. In fact, none of them did. None of them lasted much longer than a year. So what's the difference between intensity and intimacy? And there are at least a dozen 12-step programs that have to do with sex addiction, love addiction, porn addiction related issues. There's the white book for Sexaholics Anonymous, and this is the book, the anonymous book for Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. So step one, we admitted we were powerless over sex and love addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. So I always had contempt for 12-step programs because I thought only weak people say that they are powerless, right? I'm a strong human being. I'm an Australian, mate. I got the power to do anything. I was always told that I could do anything, that I was smart enough and talented enough that I could do anything if I just set my mind to it. Yet by the time I arrived at my mid-40s, and so I'd never been able to sustain a relationship for longer than about a year, and that my life wasn't really working, that I'd never earned over about $45,000 in a year, I still had a lot of reservations about this approach of admitting we are powerless. It seemed like a cop-out. It seemed like a weak way out. It seemed kind of Christian. I really didn't want anything to do with it. But just like the rhetoric in many of my yoga classes did not appeal to me, but I still appreciated yoga, and I appreciated the attractive women that I could meet there. And so I thought, I'll give a 12-step program. I'll give this like Love Addicts Anonymous stuff. I'll just give it a shot. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense to me, but I'm willing to try things that don't make sense to me. So the word powerless summons up for us several related ideas. First, it means that whatever power is usually involved in making sound choices in our sexual and emotional behavior did not reside with us. So that landed. Like, oh, okay, if I look back at the history of my life, look back at the history of my decisions with regard to love, sex, dating, okay, it sure seems like the power to make those decisions does not reside with me. Looking at Ann Coulter right now, she notes that the brilliant scholarly Heather MacDonald gave a live 45-minute presentation debunking the Black Lives Matter narrative this morning through the Center of the American Experiment. Facebook has now removed the video, and YouTube has removed the video. So Heather MacDonald relaying basic truths about Black Lives Matter and the myth of systemic police racism. Well, those videos have been removed from both Facebook and from YouTube. And how can you remove Heather MacDonald? I've never heard of anything that Heather MacDonald has had to say being removed from social media. I mean, she's a careful speaker. She's factually based. She footnotes her work. She cites sources. And now her speech this morning removed from both YouTube and Facebook, some kind of anti-conservative bias. But we don't get to control YouTube. We don't get to control Facebook. The only being that we can possibly control is ourselves. So there's no point in getting upset about things you can't control. I don't like it that YouTube removed this Heather MacDonald video. And I don't like it that Facebook has removed it. And I don't like it that the mainstream media pushes the narrative that there's this systemic police racism, the police are just treating black people awfully. It's a lie. But I don't get to control the narrative. I don't get to control the news media. I don't control the New York Times. So I ask God to grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't control. I can't control YouTube's decisions. I can't control Facebook's decisions. Can't control the LA Times or NBC News. All I can control are my own reactions. So I seek serenity over the things that I can't control, and I seek courage to do the things that I can control. It is mystifying when you encounter smart, capable people who consistently don't do the things they need to do. For example, they may run their own business, but they just don't like marketing. So instead of pursuing marketing, they play solitaire on their computer, or they just Google things, right? So it's kind of a mystery. Why do so many capable, smart, accomplished people, why do they fail to do the things that they need to do? And why do they keep doing the things that they know are bad for them, such as eating too much, spending too much time on social media, eating unhealthy foods, not getting enough exercise, not getting enough sleep, perhaps gambling, perhaps pornography, perhaps drugs or alcohol? Why do smart, capable people do things that they know are bad for them and don't do the things that they know they need to do to succeed? So fundamentally, I think it comes down to either a spiritual blockage, that if you're insane in an area of your life, that means that you are denying the truth. You are denying reality. That's functionally what insanity means, that you're denying reality. So if your life is unmanageable with regard to money, that means that you are insane, essentially, with regard to money, which means you are denying certain basic truths with regard to earning, saving, and debting. If your life is unmanageable with regard to your love life, it means you are denying certain basic truths about relationships. If your life isn't working because you can't get along with other people, that means you're denying certain basic truths about human relationships. If your life isn't working with regard to your family, that means you're denying certain basic truths about who your family is. For example, if you are stuck in traffic and you have a very important appointment, you may very well start raging at the traffic, but there's nothing you can do about the traffic. So to an outside observer, it looks like you're insane, right? You're waving your hands around. It's like, wow, that stupid driver, why can't they drive more quickly? Why can't they get out of the way? And why are you acting insane? Because you are denying reality. That's what insanity means, denying reality. Now, we're not usually all insane in all areas of our lives. Usually we're quite capable in many areas of our lives, and then in just certain areas of our lives that consistently don't work and are unmanageable, it's because we're denying certain basic truths, such as the traffic, right? We can't control the traffic. And to get angry about it shows that we are insane in that regard, because we're denying the basic truth that we can't control the traffic. And we may well be denying the basic truth that if this appointment was that valuable, we should have left home earlier. We should have checked traffic patterns before departure. People act self-destructively to hurt other people, including their family and friends. So yeah, that self-destructive behavior usually starts with some kind of denial of reality. It's a denial of reality of who your mother is, who your father is, who your siblings are, who your nieces and uncles are, the situation, right? Unmanageability and insanity always depends upon basic denial of reality. Once you accept the truth, you can ask God to grant you the serenity to deal with the truth, and then you can be capable of navigating reality. But as long as you are denying the truth, denying reality, all that can result is anxiety, insanity, destruction of yourself and other people. We were enslaved to sex and love, which we experienced as emotional dependency or romantic intrigue. I remember, I think the summer I first fell in love, summer between 10th grade and 11th grade. I was at Pacific Union College, and I fell in love with this girl who was a year below me in school. And so I'd been slightly acquainted with her for years, but never really thought about her romantically. But now that I got to see her every day, then suddenly I started developing feelings for her. And it was all very exciting because she reciprocated. And so we'd meet at the Pacific Union College pool, and we'd flirt a little bit and talk, and it seemed like, I finally met someone who understood me. And felt like I'd met someone who was perfectly shaped to fill the hole in my life, fill the hole in my soul. And I was just thrilled. And people would comment about how I was like all over this girl, how I was frolicking, how I just seemed, intoxicated by this girl. And people who knew me say, look, you're just in love with love. And they were absolutely right. I was just in love with the intoxication of being in love, because it made all my other problems go away. That hole in my soul that I carried around with me, that hole in my life, that inability to function very well, that seemed to disappear when I fell in love and met a girl who loved me back. Just like for many people, their problems seem to disappear when they discover alcohol. Without alcohol, they're miserable, discontented, fearful, and anxious. But once they get some alcohol into them, they are happy, they are outgoing, they are amorous. So people, for example, who hate chatting up women they don't know, they get some alcohol into them and suddenly they become much more outgoing and amorous. People who feel very uncomfortable dancing, they get some alcohol into them, suddenly they find they can dance. People who feel unhappy in their job, they find they get some alcohol in them, and then they feel like they can do their job. So alcohol or sex or love or gambling, it starts off as a solution to your problems. I remember, starting about 9th grade, I really got into gambling, and it just made life much more exciting. When I was going to watch a game and I had $2, $5, $10 on the outcome of the game became 10 times more exciting. So gambling added a strong layer of excitement to my life, and it wasn't initially a problem. It was a solution. It's like, yeah, now I'm excited. Now I'm passionate. Now I am living large. Now I feel intensity. And so the otherwise kind of boring, humdrum, blah, disconnected way that I was feeling would go away when I'd start gambling. So initially started out as the solution to my problems. Then one guy started doing me like a dinner, and I ended up owing him about $1,300 right towards the end of my senior year of high school. And I was moving away to Australia for a year. And so I ended up paying him about $200. And I said, look, I'm leaving town. I don't have $1,300, and let's just settle it here for $200. And don't recall ever seeing or talking to the person again. My high school journalism advisor would force me out of the room when I'd make bets with this guy, because he said it's not a good idea to develop the habit of trying to take advantage of each other. So he didn't want to bear witness to it. And my high school journalism advisor was right. After I ran up that debt of about $1,300, I resolved not to gamble again. So certainly with my own money. I was once in Vegas about 15 years ago, and this woman wanted someone to gamble with her. And I said, I don't gamble. I'm a gambling addict. And she said, look, here's $20. Just play the slots with me. So she gave me the $20. I was able to gamble with her money and not with my money. And nothing disastrous happened. Of course, I lost all of the $20. Okay, that we became captives of these things. Okay, emotional dependency, romantic intrigue, shows that there was something extremely important and powerful in our sexual and emotional patterns, which gave us some kind of payoff that we thought we needed, right? So remember in high school, it seemed like the most intense, the most truthful thing that I could say to a woman was, I need you. It seemed like the most vulnerable, intense, but also like the deepest truth, because I did feel like I needed her, because she just so happened to be the shape that fit what was missing in my life. She just so happened to fill the hole in my soul. That when I had her in my life, then it felt like my life was complete and I was functional and I was happy. I had someone who cared about me, and I cared about her, and I had someone on my side, and like all my pain and my awkwardness and feeling like I didn't belong, all those yucky feelings just went away due to the intensity and excitement of this budding romantic relationship. All right, so that we become captive to emotional dependency, that means that there's something extremely important and powerful in our sexual and emotional patterns, which give us some kind of payoff that we thought we needed, essentially that it fills a hole in our soul. Right? So initially, addiction starts out as the solution rather than as the problem. So initially, gambling, it makes life more exciting and kind of transforms a humdrum life into a life filled with passion and excitement. A life that is dull becomes transformed when you fall in love, or you have an intense sexual relationship. A life that is awkward, it becomes a lot easier once you get some alcohol into you. Or for other people, it's using marijuana, or whatever is your drug of choice. We have certain patterns in our thinking, in our emotions, and if our life doesn't work, right, we are wired to connect. And if we don't learn to connect normally with people, then we will inevitably connect to either a process such as gambling, using pornography, romantic intrigue, emotional dependency, intense relationships, food, overeating, debting. Okay, these are process addictions, under-earning, or we'll become addicted to a substance such as alcohol or drugs because we are wired to connect. We have to connect. It's not good for man to be alone. If you feel isolated, you're not going to stay isolated for long. You will inevitably connect. If it's not to other people, you will connect to a process such as sports addiction, or you will connect to substances such as alcohol, right? You cannot live disconnected. You may think you're disconnected from everybody else, but you're inevitably connected. You may be connected to just books, which is a relatively healthy addiction, or you may be connected to Netflix or to televised sports or to gambling. We cannot live without connection. And our particular love map reveals how our soul is constituted, how our psychosexual physical being, the patterns that it runs according to. It's a roadmap to our psyche. And another roadmap to our psyche is just our head, neck, back relationship, right? If your head tends to be jut forward, one shoulder tends to be higher than the other, if your back is tight and compressed or aching, if you're tipped back from the hips so that you're compressing your lower back, you have all these weird distorting patterns going on. Yeah, on the one hand, it looks like your body is out of alignment. It looks like you have bad posture. But another way of understanding what's going on is that your soul is twisted and your psyche is twisted, and your twisted psyche and soul are reflected in this distorted head, neck, back, shoulder relationship. This is Alexander Technique teacher from England, Anthony Kingsley. He's also a practicing psychotherapist and an Alexander
These are the
teacher.
way of conceptualizing Alexander's, what he called habits of thinking, rather than habits of body, which he didn't really talk about, habits of thinking. That we don't have a habit of the neck tightening, although the neck may tighten. The habit is much more interesting when we look at what makes the neck tighten and prevent that. So if the neck tightens through endgaming, when I'm trying to convince you, Valentine, of something I'm trying to say, my neck, and I'm always trying to convince people, I'm going around convincing the world that Anthony's good and right, and I'm going to get my tight neck. But the neck isn't so important. Yes, it gives me the pain. But what Alexander was getting at was not that you just have to change the neck and have a nice massage, or even elongate the neck, but to prevent the repetition of the habit of endgaming. That will solve my neck, not just for now, but for all times. And the neck pain may not have to recur day in, day out. So that's endgaming, the habit, that's a quadrant. And there's other ones. There's concentration. I'm always doing this. That's why I've got lines here. I'm always concentrating. But the answer isn't to sort of have plastic surgery or stick some Botox here, as nice as it might be, but to prevent the habit of concentration, even if it gives me a headache. The headache isn't the problem. The concentration is the problem. And the collapse relax, which gives me a pain in my lower back and starts to push my discs, squash them, and cause them to slip, herniate. That's not the problem, although it's the problem I come with. The problem is, what's my habit of depressing myself and collapsing myself? That's the Alexander habits that were, for Alexander, things that we should be tackling on the thought level and not on a postural physical level. And the final one is the mind wandering. The people that can't pay attention because being here at home is so painful, so boring. Maybe the teachers are inspiring. They just have to wander. But that's not so habitual. Hopefully the rest of life can be interesting. But the habit of mind wandering is where being at home is not so easy, that we have to wander somewhere a bit safer. So those are the four quadrants. And we flip traditionally from one extreme to another without actually going to the center. And the work of an Alexander's teacher is to take us into the center through prevention, which is why Alexander called his work the art of prevention, the work of prevention rather than correction. And preventing the habits of thought, not correcting them because they're wrong.
Life is a spiral staircase, and we're always going to be in one of these four quadrants, one of these four stages. And we're constantly circling back and forth between these four stages. One is the stage of dependency. When we're very young, we're dependent. When we're very old, we're often dependent. When we're very sick, we're dependent. When we collapse emotionally or physically, we're dependent. When our back goes out, we're dependent. So we will always have times when we're in a state of dependency. We'll always have times when we're in a state of mastery, when I think, oh man, I'm just really nailing this YouTube live streaming experience. I just taught a really good Alexander technique lesson. Man, I'm really mastering teaching the Alexander technique. Or I may feel really good about a blog post I've written, right? We all have experiences of mastery, playing cricket or gambling on the horses or building a canoe or going for a long jog. We all have experiences of mastery. So there's dependency, there's mastery, then there's feeling small in a big world, right? We will always have times when we feel small, that other people are better than us, that we're insignificant. And then we'll always have times of grandiosity, when it's like, oh man, I've nailed this. I'm a great Alexander teacher. I'm a great YouTube personality. And therefore, I'm just an amazing human being. And you lose touch with reality because you have an exaggerated sense of self-worth. So we're always moving in and out of these four stages. We never escape the spiral staircase of life. But one thing you can always do, no matter where you are on the spiral staircase of life, is you can always work on your mastery. You can always develop yourself, develop your skills, develop your talents, develop your knowledge, develop your capability. You can always work on mastery. Now, every emotion is only possible with a particular alignment of the body. So the way I am aligned right now, I cannot be angry. I cannot be depressed. I cannot be resentful. I cannot be bitter. Okay? Because I am aligned in a particular way. My head is leading my spine into length. My shoulders are free and releasing to the sides. My back is lengthening and widening. I am in peak condition. I've got good upward orientation. So one way to get upward orientation going is to do nya 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 nya. Come on, guys, everyone do a nya 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 nya. Nya 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 nya. When you do nya 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 nya, it immediately sends upward direction through your body. You can't kind of collapse into a nya 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 nya. Nya 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 nya. That sends you up. Up, up, up. Nya 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 nya. Also, it changes the point of vibration, of projection. It changes where you are projecting from, and projection comes from squeezing in the back of your throat, but it kind of comes up a little bit. So instead of speaking here, I'm speaking up here. So when I'm speaking up here, when I've got that upward direction going, my speech is much clearer. I project more strongly, more powerfully. I sound like I'm on the radio. So before taking voice lessons, I'd say number 1, number 2, number 3. After voice lessons, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. Prior to voice lessons, number 6, number 7, number 8. After voice lessons, number 6, number 7, number 8, number 9, number 10. Yes, look, you're jeopardizing your panasa by giving these heathens free Alexander lessons. Good point. But I'm just such a giver. Today is Tisha B'Av, the saddest day of the Jewish calendar. It's a day when we think about all the suffering in Jewish history, or the destruction in Jewish history, the fall of the 2 temples in Jewish history, and the fall of the second temple was due to, according to the Talmudic rabbis, gratuitous hatred between Jews. So how will we get to rebuild the third temple? By gratuitous love. So these just aren't free Alexander technique lessons that I'm giving out here. I am rebuilding the third temple by giving out free Alexander technique lessons. So every emotion depends upon a particular alignment of the body. The way I'm aligned right now, I'm going to be serene and I'm going to be calm. To feel anger, I'm going to have to tighten, compress, and kind of distort my head-neck relationship. The head's going to have to kind of jut forward, and tilt back on the neck. So this is like more of the fight or flight reflex. Okay, this is Now I'm ready to throw down in this kind of reflex. Now I can experience anger and bitterness and rage. Okay, Luke, I have a lot of shoulder stiffness of late. What can I recommend? I recommend watching a lot of Duvid.
I was actually saying earlier on Blue Lizard that Norvin relatively has the purest blood of anybody in our circles. Like Luke Ford's a Chinese, Brundlefly, Puerto Rican.
True. I am 99% European, 95-point-something% Northwestern European.
Right. Norvin is so purebred that he developed a congenital heart condition.
But it makes you jealous, though, Brundle. When you look at it, you know that
yes.
Norvin has better blood than you.
I don't know. I'm like 99.9% Ashkenazi. So.
Well, you look great.
Thanks.
Yeah, but you're a proud
Duvid looks 99% Ashkenazi and not so great.
You could be a proud Jew, but I was saying that's why we're basically an alt-light panel. And even Norvin, he's alt-light because, God forbid, he has a sickness. Saying they
what
only
the
have
fuck are you talking about, dude? But what the fuck?
You're alt-light. I think you can try to be hard on the JQ, but you still don't quite make the cut of the alt-right. That's why you're alt-light. That's why you're in the panel with the Jews.
Dude, I'm a full-blown white nationalist anti-Semite.
Yeah, but you're still, because of other factors, you're tossed in with the Jews because you don't make the cut to be alt-right and you're alt-light with the Jew shows.
What does my heart condition have to do with anything, you fucking Jew?
Health, man, you gotta be.
And
you need me to explain your own ideology to you?
Shut up. Brundle, what's the rule on the words tonight? Can I
let's not use the K word, let's not use the N word.
Damn it.
Just call.
Okay, so for shoulders, we got Elliot Blatt. He's got tight shoulders. So here's a guided video. Let's try it at 1.5. Right, so you want a little head support here.
Constructive rest. For 15 minutes, lie on your back with your head supported by 2 thin books or 1 medium-sized paperback book. And what you're looking for is just to see that the neck is reasonably extended, so we're not getting an arch or compression in your neck, but that your head can rest comfortably on the books and your back can rest comfortably on the floor. And you have your knees bent, your feet flat on the floor to support your lower back. So we're also looking for here is that you don't have an arch in your lower back, but that it's reasonably supported by the floor, and we get that when your knees are bent and your feet are flat on the floor.
Okay, let's see if we can find a video with better audio.
Hello and welcome to Voice of
Oh
Alabama
no, that's
Technique.
terrible.
I'm Allison Taylor, and we're.
Oh man.
Sway and Duvid, you're both rappers, okay? Sway, why don't
Duvid
you fire?
looks like Moses.
He does, but he's a rapper. Sway, can you give me a rap about Jews?
Yeah, let's play it. Let's play it.
Hit me, Sway. Go.
I have some raps too.
Let's play the song. Hold on, right here. You want to hear it?
Yeah, give me like 10 seconds of it.
Oh no, you got it. Come on, dog.
I don't want to hear your whole mix. I don't want to listen to your mixtape. I don't want to listen to your mixtape, bro.
Wants freestyle off the spot to see who's on top.
Oh no, you got it. Hold on.
I don't want to hear your whole.
Sorry, Boomer Tech. Go ahead.
I don't want to hear the mixtape. I just want to hear a freestyle. I want like.
Saying if you really fit on the spot, you'll be able to spit.
Sway, you go first.
All right, I try to tell you this ain't the baby boomer era. Try to dox me, but it's Halsey House Bearer. Try to dox me, but my name is Sway Guevara. I just killed this verse. Where's the pallbearer? Digging up dirt like a grave digger. But I got this clip at Outlaw Morgan saying, bloop, bloop.
All right.
N-I-G-G-A. I don't want to get you banned.
All right, I got mine right here. The Emperor has no clothes. When you're a red pill goy and you name the nose, I'm a pro Jew namer, Hall of Famer shamer. If I had a giant oven, I'd do the world.
Whoa, disavow.
Hi, this is Eric Miller from Miller Alexander Technique. Today what we're going to be talking about is the Alexander Technique constructive rest position. It's also called semi-supine. What I want to do is just show you how to do it and then explain some of the benefits by practicing this position on a regular basis. You can also download a sheet that goes along with this video by going to millerat.com/constructive rest. So to set yourself up, you'll need a few books about 3 to 4 inches in height, a carpeted floor, or a table. Start by rolling yourself back on the table, allowing your head to rest on the books. Let your knees be bent, and then your elbows be bent so that your hands are on your ribs. Now as you're lying there, you have 7 weight-bearing points. You have your head resting on your book, your upper back resting on the table, your 2 elbows resting on the table, your hips on the table, as well as your 2 feet. So the nature of that position is encouraging your back and your spine to lengthen out. It's also encouraging your shoulders to widen and your neck to release. If you'd like to take it a step further, you can practice the Alexander directions. The directions are to let your neck be free so that your head can go forward and up, so that your back can lengthen and widen, so that your knees can go forward. The idea is that you don't do the directions with your muscles, you simply think them and allow your body to carry them out for you. And as you're ready to get up, you can simply roll to the side and then push yourself up off the table using your arm, making sure to not tense your back. So we recommend that you practice this position 2 to 3 times a day for about 10 to...
Hi there, my name is Morgan Risden, and I'm the creator of Center Studio, where I teach people skills to feel more comfortable more often. Now, this week I thought I would share with you something that I'm recommending to every single person who comes to my studio. So if an individual has lower back problems, if a student has neck and shoulder pain, or maybe they have TMJ, or just excess stress that they're trying to learn to manage better, I'm always suggesting to these students, practice constructive rest at home. And so this was something I thought that would be helpful for many of you to give you some idea of what this is and why it might be helpful for you to practice it at home on your own as well. So to begin with, I want to talk about pain. And I feel as though most of us have at some point or another, unfortunately, experienced discomfort or pain. And in some cases, some of us have even had it where it, lasts a little longer, or it gets a little stronger and it's no longer the same pain, but now it's sort of metamorphed into this larger pain, right? And in these cases, I'm always telling students, this is your body's primary way of communicating with you. This is the way that the body is trying to get across a message, trying to communicate with you that something's not working, something's wrong, and asking for your attention, right? So oftentimes we're going through our life and we are very distracted, right? We've got mortgages to pay and people to take care of and jobs to do, and we have all of these things happening, what we would call stimuli, right, in our life, and these things are happening and you don't necessarily always make time to think about your body and to make adjustments. So constructive rest is a wonderful way every day that you can clear apart, a moment in time during your day where you can focus on your body, get in touch with how you're feeling, and basically open up the lines of communication. What is my body feeling? How can I help it? And then when you get up and you go about your day-to-day life, you're able to sort of make accommodations and adjustments because you know what your body is asking for. So I thought that I would share this with you today. And I have behind me, I've cleared out my coffee table. So in my living room, I've got a yoga mat on my rug. That's the way I prefer it. You might want to just put a towel down on a carpeted floor, or maybe you don't even need a rug. You just have a yoga mat on your floor. Whatever it is, I strongly discourage a bed or a couch because those things are usually associated with sleeping and are sort of tempting to individuals to just go to sleep. So this is, as the name suggests, it's an opportunity for you to be constructive. So we want to stay awake and alert. And then I also have, for my head, I've got these little, I call them books. They're not books, but you could have books. These are just little foams I got from Canal Rubber and Supply in New York City, and they're great. They're lightweight and they're different sizes, right? You could also get a blanket or something like that, or a towel that you have rolled up. The idea is maybe not a pillow or anything that's too squishy, so that you have nice firm support for underneath your head, so that your head and your spine can be all aligned properly.
So I noticed a lot of people with really rounded shoulders, like everything kind of rounds and compresses, and so they do these exercises to like push their shoulders back, but that just causes tightening and strain and doesn't really help you much. So I remember releasing the strain that I carried in my shoulders was the dramatic high point and the breakthrough point of my first Alexander technique lesson. It was with Julia Calder in Santa Monica. She was amazing. She helped me release the pain in my shoulders, told me to think about my width across my back. And I just went out from that first lesson and I just started thinking about the width across my back, and I started carrying myself in a completely different way, a much easier way. The shoulder girdle is designed to float easily on top of the rib cage. So if you think up from your tailbone to the top of your head and think about the width across your chest, across your back, rather than doing anything, just think these directions and they will have an effect on your musculature rather than try to stretch and do. And it's not going to help. Then also active rest is great for the shoulders. So what do I mean? Let me show you, young man. Oh, yeah. So everyone will need different amounts of head support. Some people won't need any, but that's a rare person. I need about 1.25 inches. Just do the active rest, with the knees up. And then do a progressive scan through the body, looking for unnecessary tension, clenching, holding, letting it go. So start with your face, and your head and your neck, and then move to your shoulders and your back, and your hips, your legs, your knees, your ankles, your feet, your toes. Just do that progressive scan. Allow your back to unlock. So I recommend doing this twice a day, 15 minutes, ideally. If you only go for 5, that's better than nothing. So one of the frequent exercises that I do with my students is that I just have them slowly and gently, gradually raise an arm. So you don't have to do it past the height of your shoulders, just up a little bit, and look what happens. Because that is with many people, actually most people, just to raise the arm, or even to think about raising the arm, this distance in here starts compressing and narrowing. This doesn't do you any benefit to have this compression. So just imagine every time you raise your arms to the steering wheel, or raise your hands to the keyboard, or raise a beer to your lips, you're compressing in here, which gives your lungs less room to breathe. You behave less efficiently, effectively, usually if you've got all sorts of unnecessary tension and compression going on. So either sit or stand in front of a mirror, or videotape yourself, and just watch what happens when you start to raise your hand. Just doesn't have to go beyond shoulder level, because if you go beyond shoulder level, this will compress. It has to anatomically, but just see what happens when you just raise your hand a little bit. So imagine you're raising your hands to the steering wheel, imagine you're raising your hands to the keyboard, just watch what happens. So what you can do, think about your length from your tailbone to the top of your head, sending direction this way. And then simultaneously think about your width across your chest, across your back. So I'm looking at a video now from expert village chiropractor Dr. Eric Sorbo, and it's called Shoulder Squeeze Exercise to Promote Good Posture. So it's like this, and then moving shoulders back and down, compressing the back, holding this compression. So according to this expert, doing this exercise will help promote proper posture. It will help get rid of the shoulders rounding and the person slumping forward. From my perspective as an Alexander Technique teacher, the more you do of this exercise, probably, the worse you'll feel and the more degraded your posture will become. So from my perspective, primary cause of bad posture is unnecessary muscle tension. And the more unnecessary muscle tension you have, the more degraded your posture will be. So adding to that muscle tension by compressing and tightening your back, I don't see that as helping your posture in the long run. So when you squeeze your shoulders back there, it narrows your torso, it narrows your back, it restricts your breathing, it makes movement more difficult, it deepens your habits of unnecessary tension and compression. But aside from that, it's wonderful. Then there's this exercise he gives, upper cross mirror exercise to promote proper posture. And he pushes his head back like that. Now, that will likely feel lousy. It'll increase the pull and pressure on your spine because the head's no longer balanced on top of the spine. So it will pull on your spine. It will deform your head-neck-back relationship. And it will increase the amount of compression you have going on in your neck. There are more joints in your neck than anywhere else in your body. So if the neck's compressed and extra tight, then that sends tightness and compression and unnecessary. G'day, mate. So a lot of my students ask me, well, what should I do when I go to bed? How can I use Alexander Technique when I sleep? And Alexander Technique is about conscious awareness of your habits during your waking hours. So I have to be aware of your habits when you're asleep. So.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Tucker Carlson.
I have done all I can to demonstrate the way of peace, the way of love, and nonviolence is the more excellent way. Now it's your turn to let freedom ring. Let the spirit of peace and power and of everlasting love be your guide. Rest in peace, John Lewis. That is the story of Thursday, July 30th, 2020. Tomorrow night.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson tonight. After 2 months of rioting and political chaos, there are still people out there who claim this is all about the death of George Floyd. Believe it or not, there are. Some of the people who say that may actually believe it. We're giving them the benefit of the doubt. The liberal mom who lives next door to you, for example. She's probably entirely sincere when she lectures you about the scourge of police brutality. She means it. She has no idea BLM is about anything else. We're not judging, and that's not surprising. Most Americans are nice people. They're literal and ingenuous. They tend to take claims at face value because they want to believe the best. But in this case, they are wrong. None of what you are watching is about civil rights. Violence and race baiting are the enemies of civil rights. What you're watching instead is a power grab. It's being coordinated by the most ruthless and cynical figures in American politics. They don't want you to know what they're doing. They're not honorable enough to state their intentions. They're not like you at all. When normal people want something, they can be aggressive. But the professional left never is. It's invariably passive-aggressive. Their first instinct is to manipulate rather than persuade. They hide their real beliefs. They say precisely the opposite of what they mean every time. They accuse you of the crimes they themselves are committing. It makes your head spin. Arguing with them is pointless, by the way. They're nihilists. They don't believe in the existence of truth or in the fixed meaning of words. They care only about power. It's painful to say this. It hurts to admit there are people in our country who are like this, but there are, and they have more power than ever. If you need more evidence of that, Barack Obama showed up at Congressman John Lewis's funeral today. Obama claimed he was there to eulogize his own friend, but that's not true, and that's not what he did. Instead, Obama gave a divisive and deeply dishonest campaign speech in church. Here's part of what he said.
By ending some of the partisan gerrymandering so that all voters have the power to choose their politicians, not the other way around. And if all this takes eliminating the filibuster, another Jim Crow relic, in order to secure the God-given rights of every American, then that's what we should do.
It's hard to believe that clip is real, but it is, down to the cloying fake accent, Mr. Hawaii guy. But take 3 steps back. Imagine if some greasy politician showed up at your loved one's funeral and started throwing around stupid partisan talking points about Senate procedure. Can you imagine that? You would be shocked if that happened. You'd probably walk out. Desecrating a funeral with campaign slogans? What kind of person would do that? But Democrats in the audience didn't seem offended. They didn't blink. They cheered. It all seemed normal to them. And why wouldn't it? Political power is their religion. It's not out of place in a church. It's what they worship. People who will politicize a funeral will do anything, and they're trying to. Democrats are working systematically to dismantle the core institutions of American life, beginning with the family and with faith. They're subverting the core system in our government, the justice system. They're nullifying laws, burning police stations, attacking courthouses, working to eliminate the legal equality of American citizens, the foundation of it all. They've systematically repurposed federal law enforcement agencies as political weapons. They have imprisoned their political opponents. Their leaders have called for making all of these changes permanent by packing the Supreme Court, packing the United States Senate, packing the electorate itself by importing tens of millions of new voters. Why are they doing all of this? They'll tell you it's to make the country better and more just, but the country isn't improving and it's not fairer. They're doing this for one reason: to ensure they have complete control of the United States. We're watching it happen right now, though almost no one ever admits it, and those who do come close to getting shut down. We can tell you stories. So how should the rest of us respond to what we're seeing? And let's be clear, by the rest of us, we're not just talking about conservatives or people who watch the show. We're talking about literally everybody else. Moderates, the politically non-aligned, traditional liberals who still care about civil liberties, there are some of those, sincere religious people of all faiths, immigrants from abroad who came to this country because of our Bill of Rights, only to watch it evaporate once they got here. In other words, everyone who fundamentally loves this country, which is still most Americans. What do people like that do in the face of this revolution? Well, it's simple. Defend the system that we have. That's our job. The American system is flawed, no one doubts that, but it works better than any other system in history. And tearing it down will not help. In fact, it will benefit only a few, the ones pushing for it, and it will crush millions. So if you care about the United States, fight for its institutions. They have served us well. This country has survived almost 250 years through a civil war. Let's keep going. The president this morning vented his frustrations on Twitter about potential voter fraud in the upcoming election. He wrote this quote, "With universal mail-in voting, not absentee voting, which is good, 2020 will be the most inaccurate and fraudulent election in history. It will be a great embarrassment to the United States." We don't know if that's true. We hope it's not. It could be, though. That's what the president wrote. And then he ended this way, quote, "Delay the election until people can properly, securely, and safely vote." End quote. Delay the election. Now, that was the headline across cable news today. And we should be clear, that will not happen. The election will almost certainly take place in November. But at this point, it's probably unwise to suggest changing the election. Voter fraud or not, too much is in flux already. That's not accidental, it's by design. A bewildered population dealing with change from every possible direction cannot fight back. That's why they're doing it. So our job is to defend what we already have as a nation and to promote the continuation of it. Keeping things the same has never been more important than it is right now. Victor Davis Hanson has thought a lot about all of these topics, and we're honored to have him, as we always are, tonight. Professor, thanks so much for coming on. If you are able to clear your head long enough to get the overview here, by my count, every significant institution in American life is under sustained assault from the left. What's the point of that, do you think?
Well, I think the point is they don't have confidence in their message that will resonate with 51% of the population. At least they seem that way, so they want to change the system rather than work within the system that won't yield the result that they demand. And I think Donald Trump is frustrated, but I think you're quite right, Tucker. He is the enforcer of traditions and protocols that have gone back to the 19th century. That we always have the first Tuesday after the 1st of November, and that's what we did it in the Civil War, we did it in World War I, we did it in World War II. He has been the victim of weaponization of the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ, the distortion of the 25th Amendment. He's been a victim of trying to erode the institution of impeachment, to politicize it in a way we hadn't seen before. So he has to strike back and say, I'm not going to pack the court. I'm not going to destroy the Electoral College. That's what you want to do. You want to let 16-year-olds vote. You want to let felons vote. But in this next 90 days, I'm going to get task forces to make sure the Postal Service is swift, efficient, and with balloting. I'm going to get more polling stations available so we can social distance. We're going to accommodate these crises of virus, lockdown, rioting, recession. We can do it, and he doesn't need to do it. That's what's the ironic, because there's about 7 or 8 known unknowns, Tucker, from now until Election Day. We don't know the waxing and waning of the virus. We don't know whether the lockdown will be porous. We don't know the status of the economy. We don't know the effect of all of this lawlessness, anarchy, and chaos on the so-called silent voter. We don't know what John Durham is going to do. We don't know what the vice president's selection of Joe Biden will portend. We don't know what Joe Biden will do if he actually has to go out and perform like a regular candidate. I have a sneaking suspicion that those are tailwinds for Donald Trump, that he doesn't need to alter the system because that's the natural role for the Republican Party in general and for him in particular. He's been a victim of people who try to distort these constitutional frameworks, and he's got to remind everybody that he's the protector and the guarantor of them.
He is the protector and the guarantor of our system. That is exactly right and so nicely put, not surprisingly. Victor Davis Hanson, thank you for that summary. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Rioters, domestic terrorists, have been waging a sustained war on the city of Portland, Oregon for more than 2 months now. For some reason, the U.S. government has allowed this to continue, even as rioters have damaged federal property and attacked police officers. Last weekend, one of them stabbed a journalist. We have footage of it. Here it is.
Someone's stalking us.
Hey, buddy, why are you following us? Ow!
Did you just stab him? Bro, he just stabbed him, dude.
He did just stab him, and the man who was stabbed survived. He joins us tonight, the journalist Andrew Duncombe. We welcome him. Andrew, thanks so much for coming on. So the factual question is first, why were you stabbed? Who did it? And has that person been arrested?
Yes, I was stabbed by a known Antifa member by the name of Blake Hamp. I feel like I was stabbed and or targeted specifically due to my location being doxxed about me being here inside of Portland 17 hours before I had arrived.
Has the man who stabbed you been arrested? Is he in jail right now?
Yes, he's been arrested. He's charged with second-degree felony assault. I'm currently being held on a $250,000 bail.
He just missed your spinal cord. By the way, congratulations on surviving. This stabbing has received very little news coverage, I assume because you're not a leftist. Had you seen this guy before? Did you expect it? Why do you think he did it?
I've never seen him before. Once again, I had been stalked and doxxed previously on Twitter by these people here, the Rose City Antifa group, where they would put my information out there saying like, he'll be here, he will be here. Previously in the past, I've been targeted by Antifa previously in the...
Okay, guys, let's get back to the Alexander technique.
Oh, we said no, there's nothing really you can do when you're sleeping. It's Alexander technique. I guess you could do active rest. It's not ideal. I think it's better to do it on a hard surface. But you can lie with a little support under your head. So I've always needed 2 pillows as far back as I remember. And most people seem to just need 1 pillow under their head at night. Some people even sleep without any pillows. You can lie here during active rest, so your knees are up, lying on your back. Hands can rest on your sides or on your stomach. About your neck being free, the head is just supported so that it's not tipping back, nor is it tipping down. You know,
now, that's not gay, all right? Just because you're doing these delicate, sensitive movements, it's not gay at all. I just want to clear that up. And this is not gay either.
Explained in my videos, he was told not to, he did it. Then he went and did it again. Then he went and did it again. Then he went and did it again. And he was told not to do it. And he went and did it again. I'm going to show a video in a second where I'm crying, singing his praises. Thank God. Excellent job, Adam on Owen Schroyer. And the next day, Red Ice Radio. Thank you, Henrik. So happy to be working with you. Just like that. And I bet you Professor Kevin MacDonald's behind the scenes. Professor Kevin MacDonald, former University of California. He was going to appear via video link for my trial, but I said I can't use him, man. He's too edgy, man. I'm so glad I never used him, because after that he got worse. He got worse. He's hanging with Dr. David Duke. They're all with him. E. Michael Jones. They're all working together behind the scenes. They're all fucking CIA counterculture wars. You watch that thing about CIA's control of culture. They're all part of that thing, but it's not even the CIA. It's that private intelligence network. It's FBI counterterrorism, CIA counterterrorism. All right? They're getting names. They're keeping you on YouTube. They want you there, and they want one waterhole where the gazelle come and frolic and play. That's Adam Green. I can show you the dates where I said, I guarantee you he goes from strength to strength. He's going to be. He's easily handled. He's flaky. He looks like he's on high doses of Prozac. People contacted me and said he was ranting about conspiracies in the fucking boss's office, and the next minute he was gone. All right? So what we're going to see, you have to understand, solving this problem is political in nature. It's not having a YouTube channel. That's okay for some information. You have got to present yourself in such a manner that you can take this information. And the plan always was, I'd be a clown, draw a crowd, and then direct people to an intellectual crowd, which was meant to be Jeremy Rothschild and Greg McCarran. But the only thing Greg McCarran wanted to do was associate it all with the white nationalist movement. And Dante, do you still have is it Hamza Slay Dragon or Dante? Do you have the live stream still? Will I absolutely fucking lose the plot at him? My fucking father was part Aboriginal. Right, his grandmother was a full-blood tribal elder of a tribe out in northern New South Wales. All right, his mother was Dulcie Turner, part of the union between a full-blood Aboriginal elder, Native Australian elder, and a friggin' Irish immigrant. That's a product my father was originally, and then of course Dulcie Turner at 18 married Mr. O'Connell, my grandfather, who I never knew. He was 55 when he married 18-year-old Dulcie Turner. My father was one of 15 children who was living in bare feet till he was 15, 16 years old. In a tin humpy, my mother, who was from an upper middle class family, an aircraft mechanic, the Bickle family, when he went over, he couldn't believe it. He couldn't believe he was raised in that. My father was a gifted genius. He won scholarships and all sorts of stuff. Heavily abused in the Catholic Church. Use your imagination. Irish Catholic, part Aboriginal, scholarships to Catholic schools. So use your imagination. So don't fucking tell me about your fucking racism. I would fucking round a lot of you cunts up and stick you in fucking FEMA camps. Every last one of you. Small-time bigotry, fine. That's everywhere. That's everywhere. But this hardcore racism you see in the United States, it's hardcore. It's nasty. I had friends who said he's Southern Italian and he was too scared to travel through some towns in Kentucky in case they tarred and feathered him. I went, what? He said, Brendan, that shit still goes on, bro. It's like, what? So anyway, you racist dumb fucks, you toothless fucking Billy Bob fuckwits. Don't bother coming on my channel, and don't try and have a debate about race on my channel, because you'll just be deleted, gone. There's only one debate to have. Jobs in the economy. Israel is a national security issue, and it's an economic job security issue. We're organising trips with big truck billboards up to Seattle and Microsoft. A good example is the recent interview I did with a Noble Life filmmaker. Alex promotes it and had a few clips in it. This is what the powers that be want, to focus on guilt by association and diversion rather than the accuracy and content of the message. No, dude, he's covering a really important message in the white nationalist shit movement. When you have a white race must take over the world, Christopher John Birkness, and we've got all the quotes. It's going up in a video. And he can't wait to have him on. Hanging out with Red Eye. Remember you said, no, he's learned his lesson, Brendan, that's fine. Next day, bang, straight on Red Ice Radio. Do you have anything to say about that, Henrik Palmgren? What, Henrik Palmgren isn't an avowed hardcore white nationalist? No? Thomas? Toothless? Fucking idiot. Adam's video on high-tech in description there is more, claiming he doesn't talk about something that he clearly does, loses credibility on your behalf. I've stood by your work, but your focus really needs to remain on Netanyahu. No, it needs to remain on the fact we don't get anywhere because we constantly have a bunch of idiots. They come in strong, you think, oh, this is great. And then you realize this fucking guy's bad news, and boom, in they go. Straight into the white nationalist movement. Every time. And they're doing well, they're cashed up, they're doing great. Now he has a monetized channel and he's doing super chats. Ladies and gentlemen, let's get this very clear. If you've been in this game for a year, any length of time, and you've tried to run a channel, you know exactly how it works. You mess with the white nationalist movement, you are not monetizing your channel, you are not having fucking super chats, and you're not having the comment sections filled with racist epithets throughout. But Adam Green does. It is a DARPA-controlled website, right, by the military. They wanted my stuff on there, but they wanted me. I'll tell you, right, why do you think it went to 250,000 views, the one on Israel's secret weapon, the Telltale program? Right, but as soon as I criticized Trump, or before that, they said, that's enough, Brendan, you've got your point out there, boom, no more, shut up, get offline. They weren't trying to just annoy me, they were trying to wipe me offline and get me to stop talking about it, leave it alone. All right, they're working on it in the background somewhere. But the moment I went after Alex Jones, I'd be logged out. I would literally be logged out as I was typing, going after Alex Jones. All the other videos wouldn't catch on because I criticized Trump. They protect Trump. Alex Jones is still on the Android app, for fuck's sake. You know why they took his channel down? Because he was fucking putting his foot in it so much it wasn't funny. He's protected on it. Fucking Steve Pachanik used to be on there going, calm down, Alex, I'll have your stuff back up tomorrow. And it was back up the next day. Back up. Some of us have memories. All right? So, Thomas, stop making a fucking idiot of yourself, please. Please. Now, where's this other idiot? I was laughing my ass at Bob Smith. This guy's, I want to have a debate. Oh, never mind. I see Bok deleted the video and all the comments on it now. They proved how big a liar he is. I didn't screenshot them. My bad. Anyways, I gave him constructive criticism, how to stop attacking everyone and put out quality content of his own. Sounds like a soy boy. Sounds like one of Adam Green's boyfriends. Probably is Adam Green. Emphasizing the things he...
Okay, guys, let's get back to the real crowd-pleasing content of intimacy versus intensity. What's the difference here, mate? Sometimes we were seeking to screen the world with all its demands and responsibilities out of our awareness by mesmerizing ourselves with sexual activity, right? So if life is a little bit too much, then you want a distraction, right? If your life doesn't work, you're going to want a distraction. So we're wired to connect. We either connect normally with other people, or failing that, then we have to connect to processes such as watching televised sports or eating too much or shopping too much or gambling too much. We are wired to connect, and we're either going to connect to people, to processes, or to substances. And so if our life doesn't work, then, hey, what about using a bit of porn or a bit of gambling, or, you know, eat a whole pizza or a gallon of ice cream, right? Sometimes we seek to screen the world with all its demands and responsibilities out of our awareness by mesmerizing ourselves with gambling, with food, with Netflix. Hey, anyone watch the Last Chance U? I think it's season 5. It's just dropped. It's about some junior college in Oakland, California. I love that show, Last Chance U. The director, the production company behind it, they also did that excellent Netflix documentary series on cheerleading. Not gay. It's not gay, mate. Gallon of bloody halo top. That is a kosher way to screen out life. I have not watched Dark yet, but it's highly rated, so I'm looking forward to watching it. I am watching Frayed. So Frayed is going to be on HBO, I think, starting Thursday. Frayed is about this very posh Aussie lady who's living in London, and she's got a very rich, posh husband who suddenly dies. And he's supposed to be in Zurich, but instead he was in Soho, London, and he was having it off with a hooker. And he died of a heart attack, but he had a heart attack because he was ingesting all these drugs, and he was having it off with a hooker, and she had inserted his phone in his rectum. So the word gets out about how he died, and so this nice Aussie wife and her kids, they're left with absolutely nothing because her husband was a shyster. So they have to go back to Australia, to Newcastle, Australia, move in with a mother. They're penniless, and set in 1988, Newcastle, Australia. It's called Frayed. It's fair dinkum, mate. It's fair dinkum. And Last Chance U. I recommend everything by this director. I loved all the 4 previous seasons of Last Chance U and his documentary on cheerleading. Okay, sometimes we were trying to deaden a load of guilt and frustration by taking romantic or sexual holidays, right? If you can't deal with the anxiety you're feeling, you can't deal with your guilt.
Almost immediately to the rest of the Democratic Party, and defund the police became a talking point. Now, Barack Obama, one of the sleaziest and most dishonest figures in the history of American politics, used George Floyd's death at a funeral to attack the police. Here's what he said.
Bull Connor may be gone, but today we witness with our own eyes police officers kneeling on the necks of black Americans.
Bull Connor? The country falling apart, riven by racial strife and tribalism. And one of the most respected people in the whole country decides to pour gasoline on that and compare the police to Bull Connor? As if America or Minneapolis is like Birmingham, Alabama in 1963. It's insane. It's reckless. But of course, Obama doesn't care. It's only about November and the coming election. The problem is what they're doing to get there. What happens when you eliminate the police or diminish their power? Here's what happens.
Following riots and public demonstrations against the Minneapolis police, the city is now seeing a surge in crime. Homicides have doubled this year. Gun crimes dramatically outpaced last year. People who live and work where the riots hit say prostitution, drugs, and burglary are now unabated. With a segment of the public and the city council against them, the police union says morale is terrible. Officers don't proactively police and are reluctant to use force.
Oh, so when you eliminate the police, there's more crime. A surprise to precisely no one, including the people who did it. Members of the Minneapolis City Council knew exactly what the result would be. They're not that stupid. So even as they abolished the police, they forced taxpayers to pay for security for their homes. Oh, I get it. Fox News senior correspondent Rick Leventhal has been in and around Minneapolis really for months now. He joins us with a report. Hey, Rick.
Hey, Tucker, as we all watched, Minneapolis became the launch pad for nationwide protests 2 months ago after the death of George Floyd. And those demonstrations turned ugly fast, and the destruction that you've documented was widespread.
Yeah, let's go. There.
Apartment buildings, restaurants, and other businesses were set on fire and looted, some in broad daylight. Vehicles were smashed and torched, including police cars and a postal truck, to the delight of the crowds. But no one is cheering now, Tucker. Parts of the city have been deserted. Much has not been repaired. Crime is up and businesses down. Homeless camps filling city parks are just now being dismantled. A salon owner told Fox and Friends about the loss of her shop that she's had for 40 years.
I just could not believe it. Everything was just up in a, just a big fire, just a big ball of fire. Yeah. Smoke and fire, and I couldn't believe it. It hurts to know I have no business. I have nothing. I don't even have a styling chair anymore, you know. Yeah. I don't have a salon anymore, so it hurts.
And Tucker, as you mentioned, in the aftermath of the riots, the city council voted to defund the police, drawing criticism from a group of anti-violence black activists who held a press conference earlier this month.
It is time for us to stand up in this city. It is time to tell the city council that utopia is a bunch of BS. We are not in Mayberry RFD. We are in the Wild Wild West.
The city needs help, Tucker, and many are wondering when it's coming.
I like how she put it. Thanks so much, Rick. Good to see you tonight. Thank you.
You too.
Pastor Steve Carl has been in Minneapolis for a long time, for decades. He's seen the city evolve, including recently, and we're happy to have him with us tonight. Pastor, thanks so much for coming on.
Okay, let me go back to the crowd-pleasing topic of intimacy versus intensity. Sometimes we were trying to deaden a load of guilt and frustration by taking romantic or sexual holidays. So what do you use to take a holiday when reality is a little bit too much? So I've often found, tuning into sports, I forget all my problems, or, I'm going to Netflix out tonight, or I'm going to eat a pint of Halo Top ice cream. Halo Top, because it's so healthy, it's a permissible holiday. Sometimes we sought to fill the emptiness within us with another person. Yeah, I often experience that just so happened that the hole in my soul, hole in my life, was just perfectly fitted by a particularly attractive young woman. Then that hole would disappear for a few weeks, even a few months. Or perhaps we mask the fear of commitment by thinking of ourselves as living out new standards of morality based on guilt-free sex, free love, or recreational sex. But all of us were using our sexual powers and emotional investments to either lessen pain or augment pleasure. These pervasive motives governed our sexual and romantic intentions and actions. So yeah, if you're using something to fill something that's vital, necessary to normal functioning, it's not going to work for long, right? So if you use alcohol to feel at ease in social interactions, then that's not going to work indefinitely. If you're using porn to fill a need for pleasure and excitement and thrills in your life, that's not going to keep working for very long. And if you're using, say, excessive thinking and pursuit of sexual and romantic intrigue to kind of make up for having a life that does not work, then your life is not going to get better. You're only going to deaden the pain. You're only going to escape from reality for a little while. And when you get back to reality, you'll probably be in no better and often a worse shape because you're not up to reality. So, for example, I quit porn, quit masturbation, got sober about 7 years ago. So that started affecting how I'd interact with people in daily life. So I had a lifelong habit of making inappropriate, sexual jokes and innuendos. But once I cut out the porn, cut out the masturbation, cut out the cheap and sleazy one-night stands, then it started rewiring my system. So I started being able to relate to women more as human beings because I did not need to sexualize them because there was nothing I could do with that. So I was able to just relate to them on a human level, and it kind of turned down the thermostat of my lust to a more sustainable level, and the rest of my life started to improve. These pervasive motives governed our sexual and romantic intentions and actions. At the same time in our lives, our behavior began to take on the compulsive hallmarks of addiction. So all addictions start out as functional. They start out enhancing our lives. They start out, making things better because they distract us from our problems and they temporarily fill the hole in our soul. The ones where liaisons became monthly, then weekly, they happened when inconvenient or when they interfered with work or family obligations, right? So I had some days where I was whacking it out to pornography 3 times a day, right? Not an ideal way to live. You really don't want to be rubbing yourself raw. It doesn't build your self-esteem, doesn't build your high functioning. The occasional pleasurable daydream grew into a constant obsession that destroyed our ability to concentrate on more ordinary and more important things. Yeah, so this is how my sex and love addiction can very easily come back. Once I start going, oh, it's okay to just check out for a while and have this, erotic daydream, right? And it can last 2 minutes and then 5 minutes and then 10 minutes and then, it can go on for 20 minutes and I'm losing my day and I'm losing my sobriety. So that's how my dysfunctional lust starts pouring back into my life. So lust just does not do me any good. I'm not in a relationship. I have no productive use for my lust. So ideally, right now, I have a lust-free life. And when it comes into my life, it does not serve me. Right? Initially, it's intoxicating, it's exciting, it adds, pleasure and depth, and colors seem brighter, and everything seems sharper and more exciting, and I feel more fully human. And the initial rush from a hit of lust is exciting, but very quickly, the 2 minutes turns to 5 minutes to 10 minutes to 20 minutes, and I'm getting in trouble. You can lose your sobriety just by what you choose to think about. So you're not responsible for the first thought, but if I dwell on my lust, then I start losing my sobriety. So lust does not serve me, right? Only lust for my wife in the future, yeah, that would serve me. But lust for women that I'm not having sex with, that I'm not in a relationship with, does not serve me. All it does is distract me from reality. The occasional pleasurable daydream grew into a constant obsession that destroyed our ability to concentrate on more ordinary and more important things. One by one, such things as satisfaction in our work, friends, and social activities dropped away as we found more and more of our time and our thoughts absorbed by one person, right? You find one person who fills the hole in your soul, and so you become increasingly dependent. And this desire for rescue, or to be rescued, to rescue other people, or to be rescued yourself, it comes from the same sick, addictive place. Whoops. That's not what I wanted to play. Okay, here's a lecture on emotional intimacy.
Sometimes the best. But then in a couple of years, they find out that no, they don't quite have the recipe down. And a lot of these people come from quasi-functional homes and think they know what they're doing. Then if you come from a little bit more fractured background and maybe are new to recovery, I think what emotional intimacy starts to look like is kind of like for sex and love addicts, when you're new to recovery, it kind of looks like somebody has blindfolded you and said, hey, you know, hit that dartboard over there, and all the counselors and all the women's support groups and all the men's groups are going to be standing on the side of you saying, no, go this way, no, go that way. And it's kind of like trying to nail that dartboard with this tiny little point, and you get kind of lost in the process. So I'd like to begin to illuminate what those finer points are, because I think that they can be quite difficult just for mainstream people to get a grip on. So the next thing I want to point out is also if we don't have emotional intimacy, then things begin to get pretty superficial, and then it shows up later in our relationship, and where it shows up most is in the bedroom. So now that I have your attention to that, what I'm going to start going into is that if you do not have this emotional intimacy with yourself, you don't have it with somebody else. You can't create it, can you? If you engage in intercourse with your mate when it is superficial, then what you have in bed is pretty superficial. And then what happens is you start looking for greener pastures. And then those greener pastures get pretty boring, don't they? And then we start doing the intensity chase, which is what addiction is all about. And we all know that pretty well because we discovered that what we're going after is pretty much like a bag of cotton candy. And we were seeking the meat, you know, the big hearty red meat. And if you're a vegetarian, maybe you're going for a slice of turkey. So when people walk into my room and they're complaining about their relationship not working, the first thing that they come to me with is, we're not communicating. I hear that over and over. So I spent a lot of time as a therapist teaching people how to communicate. And that can take, I've spent a whole day speaking workshops on communication skills. So I'm going to not even go into that today because I think you've heard a lot about that probably. Oh, and as I'm talking, if you have any questions, please ask them. But if we don't see communication skills being utilized in relationship, then what we start having is reactivity. And what does that look like? If you've ever had the experience of, oh, I should have said that, that's a reactive state. If you ever thought to yourself, that's my addict brain talking, not my new knowledge at work, that's addictive. I'm sorry, that's a reactive state. If you ever realize that after the dust has settled from a verbal holocaust that you inflicted and that, oops, you didn't mean to do, guess what? You just fell into a reactive state. So getting a hold of how you fall into a reactive state and replacing that with more functional tools is critical to the survival of your relationship. Because although the two of you may enjoy each other's company, if you don't have those communication skills, how can you deepen what you're experiencing? Yes, question.
What one communication skill do you see as being the most lacking among your clients who come in?
Those nasty things to yourself that you don't want to hear that you do, and actually saying them out loud to somebody else. It takes a lot of confidence. And what that process does is starts creating an internal container. You can be an independent person when you know what you're feeling. If you don't know what you're feeling, How will anybody else? And yet we walk into the world saying, hi, I don't know what I'm feeling. I'd like to connect with you. Why don't you tell me what I'm feeling? Oh, how dare you? And it's a setup for failure. And the other piece in communication is if we don't have a good listener. If we don't have a good listener, this is then what I oftentimes see couples get frustrated over, but there's no chemistry. Well, no, because you can be the best communicator in the world, but if you don't have somebody in front of you that can contain themselves, you don't have a good listener.
What is contain?
So this is exactly what your question brings up, because if I am trying to listen to somebody and my family of origin tapes, which is a theory by Murray Bowen, which we'll talk about in just a second, if my family of origin tapes come up and contaminate the container, then I'm not going to be a good listener. So let me break that down a little bit. Murray Bowen, you may or may not have heard of, he came up with the concept of family of origin issues. And what that is, that means is when you're a little girl or a little boy, you're in a family, and genetics does have a play in this, and we're not going to get into the genetic versus environment conversation. But what we do know, via Piaget as well, is that as you're growing up, your brain was patterned to believe that how you exist as an adult is the right way to do it. And that's very important to know, because that can give you a lot of forgiveness, self-forgiveness. And oftentimes a lot of people forget that. So if we're blindly going around doing our little day-to-day thing, not aware of our family of origin issues, we're going to contaminate the container that we try and bring somebody into. So part of being emotionally intimate is being able to come into oneself and say, wow, I'm confused by what you're saying. Could you clarify that for me? As opposed to, you're being a real jerk. You don't even know how to talk to me. That's a completely different experience now, isn't it? But that experience will shift based upon what you know to be true. So another component of emotional intimacy is being a good listener. And in order to be a good listener, you have to have done your family of origin work. Sounds like a light bulb went on back there. Now, if we have been in an abusive family, what happens then is one or two things.
Seems like 5 minutes ago I was considered a hero and people would be clapping and glad that I was doing what I was doing, and then the video came out and I was summarily fired for appearing in what was told to me is an embarrassing video. So that's what happened.
Leaving aside the legal question of whether an employer is just allowed to fire someone for appearing in a video that might hurt the Biden campaign, I'm interested in what their justification was. You're a doctor treating patients in an emergency room. What does a video have to do with your work?
Yeah, of course it has nothing to do with my work. I'm very well liked, well regarded. Thankfully, I've got a wonderful reputation with the patients, with my staff, with my colleagues, and I actually enjoy what I do. But you know, we came to Washington because we're so distressed. You know, frontline doctors like myself, we're seeing patients not get what they need. We're seeing the doctor-patient relationship being completely eroded, that the governors are empowering pharmacies to overrule doctors who've had conversations with their patients. It's really something that Americans should be alarmed about. And as you probably know, I did not know things were going to go viral. Of course, I was told later that we were the most viral video of all time. Apparently there was 18 million views on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever it is, and they all kind of summarily pulled all of it. It was just all taken off. My own website was taken down, and it's been interesting ever since.
And we should say for our viewers who haven't seen it, and presumably our viewers can't see it because the tech companies have censored it, but it wasn't an hour-long video on hydroxychloroquine. There are many parts to it, including what you just said, that were interesting, that were clearly true. Shouldn't you, as a practicing physician with a medical degree, be allowed to express your views on science as you practice it without being censored?
You know, what's funny is the video that got the most attention was a press conference we did right in front of the Supreme Court, but actually the summit was 7 hours of doctors teaching the American people. We decided to come straight to the American people with lots of social media, so we did a morning session for 3.5 hours and an afternoon session for 3.5 hours. I'm not sure you even knew that, and we went through everything with the lockdown, masks, hydroxychloroquine treatment, other treatments, just all of it, how it affects older people, younger people, etc. That was actually the majority of the summit, and yes, people will be able to find it on, I had to rebuild my website really quickly, America's Frontline Doctors. They took my URL, so it's got the word summit now, America's Frontline Doctors, summit.com. I don't want anyone to just believe me because I'm saying it. We put together a white paper that has all the science. It's utterly irrefutable that hydroxychloroquine is safe. That's without question. And there's tons and tons of studies to show now that it's quite efficacious. You have to kind of wonder why we're still talking about an FDA-approved medication. It's been around for 65 years. It's been around since long before George Washington, who gave it to his troops. Why are we still discussing it? It's a little bit strange.
Yeah, I mean, look, I majored in Russian history. I don't know anything about hydroxychloroquine. I do know about the way the country's supposed to work, and physicians should be allowed to explain their experiences, their clinical experiences treating patients. And you're not allowed to because Joe Biden getting elected is more important, and that's scary. And I'm grateful that you came on tonight, Doctor. I really am.
May I say one thing? There's a lot of people saying some negative things about me. I would ask people please to stop saying negative things about me. I'm a board-certified emergency physician. I take good care of patients. We've hired Lynn Wood to help me in this matter, and I hope that that puts to rest anything that people might want to say that's defamatory.
I hope so, too. I rarely root for lawyers, but I am in this case. Dr. Gold, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So as you know, if you watch the show, repeatedly over the years, we have attacked robots. Automating everything has downsides. And by the way, robots are creepy. Well, apparently, a moment ago, the robots at the center of our camera fought back and messed with the picture. You probably couldn't see the show.
That's kind of simplifying. Many things happen if you've been in an abusive family. But what I want to highlight is that if you've been in an abusive family, oftentimes what we see is that somebody will either placate or dominate. And that is an example of how, when we see domestic violence situations, oftentimes we sit there and say to somebody, well, why don't they just get out? What's happening? I mean, why, for instance, if it's an abusive male and an abused female, oftentimes there's a lot of criticism nailed towards a woman because why doesn't she get out? Well, what happens is that the poor abuser has learned in his family to be abusive, but then oftentimes the parents know, out of self-preservation if nothing else, that if they get too abusive, they're going to be thrown in jail. And then maybe they actually have some moments of compassion, they're kind to the child. And so they will flip into absolute placation as well. And so there gets to be this dance, this addictive dance, which I think people begin to relate with, where you go from one extreme to the other, and if you don't know that you're riding those extremes, how can you hold a container for somebody to walk into and have a conversation with? And then, when we find that, oh my gosh, we're having another one of those god-awful conversations, we find we're living our worst nightmare again. And that's because the family of origin issues that directed us how to live our lives aren't uncovered. And so we keep living out our nightmare. And oftentimes when we, well, here's a real simple way of how society determines if somebody's family of origin issues aren't worked. Because oftentimes somebody will have an interaction, let's say Mary and Sue are having an interaction, and Mary walks away from Sue and tells Eleanor, wow, boy, that was a really difficult situation. Sue's got issues. And so that's kind of society's way of saying, boy, that Sue isn't responding to the situation right in a right-sized manner. She's being hyperbolic. It's too much. So in addition to knowing your family of origin issues, then that kind of dovetails into boundaries. If you don't know your family of origin issues, you can't really know your boundaries now, can you? And what really kills emotional intimacy, of course, is boundaries. So we're beginning to see how these qualities build on themselves, because if you can't communicate or listen, and if you don't have personal awareness of your family of origin issues, you will not be able to effectively express your boundaries. In other words, you can't see what you want. You remain a child. Because what else is someone who can't talk and ask for what they need? The only time you get to be that powerless is as a child. And then theoretically, there's a protector who will take care of you. Now the problem is a lot of us didn't get to spend enough time being a child. Because what happens when we are a child? We don't know what's best for us, literally. Our brain isn't fully formed, the neurons aren't firing. And so we rely on somebody who says that they love us to make these decisions for us, and then we learn how to make decisions for ourselves. We learn how to have self-care. That's where the self-care routine comes from.
Okay, looking at an opinion piece in the New York Times, John Lewis, the late sainted John Lewis, he believed that America would survive. Wow. That is a relief. And then CNBC reports 30% of Americans missed their housing payments in June. I wonder if that could cascade.
So, but if you didn't get to spend enough time in that child state, then oftentimes we see as adults people spending their whole lives looking for somebody to take them back into that state. We may be asking them to make our decisions for us, or we may be trying to make decisions for somebody else. You know, are we the abuser or the placater? It's that same paradigm, it's that same extreme. And why is that bad? To look for somebody else to determine our world? Because if we knew how to determine our world, we wouldn't be looking. So we're probably, the odds are, we're going to find somebody really unsafe. We're going to find an unsafe protector, and we're going to find an unsafe environment.
Yeah, I think this woman is right on, and I believe she's a lesbian, and her name's Danielle DeBray, and I think she's making a lot of very important points here about relationships, that you don't have it together. You're only going to attract people into your life who are broken and flawed and dangerous, right? If you're not able to say no, you're essentially only going to attract rapists into your life. And I just don't mean rapists in the sexual sense. So I had my share of being, smacked around and beaten down when I was a kid. So then when I entered the work world, that was normal to me, that I would have a boss who would abuse me. So certain things become normal to us in childhood, and then we seek to repeat them because we seek to repeat the most intense emotional experiences of our childhood until we learn to grow up. Right? One of the first things that my therapist talked to me about was boundaries in 1998. I had great trouble with boundaries. The occasional relief of sexual tension with masturbation became a need for which the opportunity had to be created. We had lost control over the rate or frequency or both at which we would seek the romantic or sexual solution to life's ills. So for many, many years, I chased the romantic, sexual, pornographic solution to life's ills, or I would chase the gambling solution to life's ills because just gambling made life so exciting. Or I'd chase the overeating solution to life's ills because just eating a whole bunch of food, it would take all the blood into my stomach to digest it, and it would get rid of my anxiety. Or I would try to get rid of my anxiety and lack of comfort by becoming obsessed with politics or with sports. I would just do everything to an extreme. There's not a way of living that worked.
Thus we relive our nightmare of childhood again. The second problem is once we find that person, there are, I don't want to paint a complete grim picture because I think one has been painted. I think there are people out there who are saints. and who have gotten to a place in their lives where they can give. But somebody who's looking for that protector, the odds are you're not going to find them. And so you wound up with, if you were looking for somebody to tell you what to do, you wound up with somebody who's controlling. Because why would somebody want to take over somebody else's life? It's exhausting.
Right. If you're poor, functional people, generally speaking, not going to want you in your life. If you're a chronic debtor or under-owner, or you have some other crippling addiction, high-functioning people are not going to want you around. So the worst thing about being poor is that essentially only poor, struggling people will allow you into their lives. If you're not able to get your life together, people who do have their lives together will not allow you into their lives.
So I'll mention here that studies have shown that higher number of addicts have suffered from emotional neglect. What that means is that a child in an emotionally neglectful family will not learn the right rules for getting along in society. So when the rest of the world sees a green light, they're hitting the accelerator button and moving forward. Now, if you're an emotionally abusive family, you see the green light and you're like, oh no, I'm not going this way. Whatever it takes, I'm getting out of here, because that's what it took in an emotionally abusive family. The rules are cattywampus, they're crazy. You have to do whatever you can. So then that brings us to the next part. If you've come from this kind of family, you don't really know the rules of engagement, do you? And that's part of emotional intimacy, because in order to have an emotionally intimate relationship, whether it's a friend or anything else, it has to have a container. For a container to exist, there are rules of engagement. So let me just kind of review that again. If you have family of origin issues and you clear them, then you can clearly set boundaries. If you have boundaries, then you can set rules of engagement, so you have a container. Now, if you have a container, just like a corporation, this helps some people who are in business have this idea. If you have a container, then the rules of engagement, you know how to get along. If you're an individual person, you usually know how to get along with yourself. But if you don't have those rules with somebody else, oftentimes what I see, most obvious, is a competition. So when a couple walks in, it kind of looks like this. Somebody walks in, and couples walk in to see me, I should clarify. Looks like this. What couple partner A will say, well, he hurt me last year. And partner B will say, well, she hurt me 2 years ago. And partner A will say, well, he hurt me 3 years ago. And when they're in private, the conversation looks like this. It'll start off good. I really don't like it when you put the salt in my coffee this morning. And partner B will say, well, I did that because you gave my sock to the dog yesterday. So there's never any container, because what a container looks like is, I didn't like it when you put the salt in my coffee this morning. The listener then steps back and says, oh, I hear that you didn't put salt in, that you didn't like that. Well, you're right, my bad. I was feeling really passive aggressive. And
so looking at the chat, Ricardo says, does it benefit us to focus on our failings? The most successful people seem to lack self-awareness. And the immediate analogy that comes to mind is your car. Let's say your brakes don't work. Does it benefit you to focus on the fact that your brakes don't work so that you go fix that problem? Or should you instead focus on all the parts of your car that do work and just go out there and have faith that you will find some way to stop, right? So if you have some kind of crippling addiction in your life, it's going to may very well kill you, but if it doesn't kill you, it will make you miserable, right? So if you ignore some crippling addiction you've got going on, you are headed for misery, for attracting bad people into your life, and you may very well be headed for death. So should you instead focus on all the great things in your life and just allow this crippling addiction to continue, right? I think if you've got a crippling addiction in your life, you need to address it head on, no matter how wonderful the rest of your life is. And Ricardo says, what is the line between normal boundaries, neglect, and abuse? It's, I don't think I can objectively define it. I feel like I know it when I see it. So it's a great question to which I don't have a good answer right now.
I shouldn't have done that, and I'm sorry, and how can I make amends? As opposed to back and forth, the competition. That means that there's a breakdown in the rules of engagement. Now, if there are no rules of engagement, guess what else goes out the window?
So do sociopaths suffer, or do they just make everyone else suffer? So I don't think they feel normal levels of guilt and shame, right? But they certainly feel frustrated. I mean, if you cut them, do they not bleed? But if they ruin your life, I don't think they're going to feel bad about it. So about 4% of the population are sociopaths. And so here's the general rule. Good people make you feel good. Bad people make you feel bad. If you got someone in your life who consistently makes you feel bad, then why are they in your life, right? Generally speaking, you should have overwhelmingly more positive interactions with someone than negative. If the ratio ever drops down to something like 1-to-1 or even 2 positive interactions to every negative one, that relationship's in trouble, right? Because the pain of the negative interactions probably outweighs the benefits of the positive interactions. So sociopaths tend to hook you with saying a lot of nice things early on. They kind of love bomb you. Oh, you're great. You're amazing, Luke. You're doing such incredible work. I'm just stunned and so supportive. You don't get enough credit, all right? You get that love bombing early on, and they hook you with the love bombing, and then they start abusing you, and you put up with it because you hope that there's more love bombing still to come, right? So if people give you disproportionate praise and love early on, then big sign that they're very possibly sociopaths, meaning narcissistic personality disorder. What are the other major personality disorders that make up a sociopath? I'm blanking.
Because in order to feel, think of it, if you, in your wildest dreams, when you are with your mate, do you want to sit there and say, yeah, I want to be with my mate, and look to see who's stabbing me in the back? Because, boy, this world is sure a friendly place. I want to take on a real, backstabbing mate. No, you want safety. You want to know that whoever you walk through this world with has got your back. So there has to be safety. So in order to have safety, there has to be rules. The other thing that there has to be is there has to be consistency. Now, if you're in addiction, what if you need a hit? Consistency goes right out the rule because there is no consistency. If you need a hit, doesn't matter what you agreed to. It doesn't matter what you said you would do. It doesn't matter how you thought you would operate in this relationship. That's all out the window. Because it's all about the hit. And as you're doing the hit, of course you can't think of family of origin issues because you're thinking the hit. How am I going to get the hit? Let's get the hit. Where's the hit? Come on, where's the hit? Oh, the hit. That's what it looks like.
What is the hit?
The hit. When you're an addict, you want to go for the hit. You want to go for the drug. You want to go for the addiction. Whatever it is. Alcohol, sex.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the question was, what's the hit? So when it's in their addict thinking, you can't be thinking consistency or safety or container or rules of engagement or boundaries. And family of origin issues are, way off the list. So to review, in order to have emotional intimacy, we know we need to be able to communicate and to be aware of our emotional self, which comes from
The framework
family
is
origin issues.
the worst thing, the worst possible, the worst conceivable offense, moral offense, is not, rape. It's not murder. It's not anything horrible that you can imagine. The worst conceivable offense is this term so-called racism, and a term that's very kind of ambiguously defined so as to basically keep those who are in charge in possession of the dominant moral high ground. And what you see this, unfortunately, they never learn, these Republican types. They're so obsessed with proving that they're not racist, where the goalposts are always moving. They don't understand it's a game. They think it's about morality when it's about power. And so they crawl over the glass, they wash feet, they debase themselves in every possible way in order to prove whatever we are, we're not racist. It doesn't work. And that's the moral framework that we're stuck in. And until we kind of get out of that framework and say, I mean, yes, obviously racism properly defined is wrong, but it shouldn't be a national obsession. We need to move on and carry on with the business of building a civilization. And until people are willing to say that, standing up proudly and act upon it, this country will only become even more of a joke, if that's even possible.
Okay, let's go out to a nice song here.
Shalom everyone. We're about to record the entire Book of Lamentation, full Book of Eicha, just from the beginning to the end. You may wonder why we're doing that, since we have already 9 sessions with each parak, each chapter, and each chapter pasuk by pasuk explanations. Well, thank God, Baruch Hashem, I was flooded with emails and phone calls. One of them I would like to read to you. Dear Rabbi Weisblum, I'm writing to you from a nursing home far away from Jewish community nursing home. I'm very lonely and depressed here. My soul aches spiritually and my body physically. My family has abandoned me a while back, and I'll be lucky to have a visitor, not to mention a kosher meal once in a blue moon. I have discovered your YouTube channel lately. You and your teaching are a ray of sunshine in my very cold, dark, lonely days and night. Due to these circumstances, I will not be able to attend and listen to the Book of Eicha, Lamentation Reading, this weekend. I'm throwing myself at you.
So we read the Book of Eicha, the Book of Lamentations on Tisha B'Av.
Mercy, Rabbi, to please honor my request. Please read the Book of Lamentation just like you will be reading to your own congregation and post it on YouTube. I cannot find anywhere on YouTube the entire book of reading from the beginning to the end. Word cannot describe, but may Hashem bless you for this tremendous mitzvah. Have an easy fast, Yosef. Well, I would like to dedicate my reading to this unknown individual, Yosef, as well as all those people who are hospital, nursing home, and other places who really cannot hear the Megillah reading. So first and foremost, we're taking off our shoes before the reading, or we're putting something that is non-leather shoes. Then we sit either in the low bench or on the floor, and we read the Book of Eicha. Eicha yashva badad ha'ir rabati am hayeta ke'almana rabati bagoyim sarati bamdinot hayta lamas bachoti v'ke v'layla v'dim'ata al lehya ein la menachem mikol ohavea kol re'eha bagduva hayula lehoivim galta Yehuda me'oni umerov avoda ישבה בגויים, לא מצאה מנוח, כל רודפיה השיגוה בין המצרים. דרכי ציון אבלות מבלי באי מוהל כל שעריה שוממים כהניה נאנחים בתולותיה נוגות והיא מרלה היו צריה לראש אויביה שאלו כי אדוני הוגה על רוב פשעיה עולליה הלכו שבי לפני צר ויצא מבת ציון כל הדרה היו שריה כאיילים לא מצאו מראה וילכו ולא כוח לפני רודף זכרה ירושלים ימי עוניה ומרודיה כל מחמודיה אשר היו ממי קדם בנפול עמה ביד צר ואין עוזר לה.
Okay, here's the English translation here from the Book of Lamentations, the desolation of Jerusalem, chapter 1. How deserted lies the city, once so full of people. How like a widow is she who once was great among the nations. She who was queen among the provinces has now become a slave. Bitterly she weeps at night, tears upon her cheeks. Among all her lovers there is none to comfort her. All her friends have betrayed her. They have become her enemies. After affliction and harsh labor, Judah has gone into exile. She dwells among the nations. She finds no resting place. All who pursue her have overtaken her in the midst of her distress. The roads to Zion mourn, for no one comes to her appointed feasts. All her gateways are desolate. Her priests groan, her maidens grieve, and she is in bitter anguish. Her foes have become her masters. Her enemies are at ease. The Lord has brought her grief because of her many sins. Her children have gone into exile, captive before the foe. All the splendor has departed from the daughter of Zion. Her princes are like deer that find no pasture. In weakness they have fled before the pursuer. In the days of her affliction and wandering, Jerusalem remembers all the treasures that were hers in days of old. When her people fell into enemy hands, there was no one to help her. Her enemies looked at her and laughed at her destruction. And that'll do it for this evening.